Hello and good morning, everyone. This is our first eAF web form Q&A clinic. So we're organizing this session for any new or already registered user of the web, the new PLM portal. So we are here to answer any questions that you may have. Also, we know that you have different channels through which you can contact us, for example, the service desk, but we wanted to offer a little bit more personalized service and an opportunity where you can ask us questions. We know that we don't have a phone line for our service desk. You may need help urgently, so we wanted to be here for your questions. It could be anything related to the use of these new web forms. So please do feel free to join all of these scheduled sessions, or just if you have a particular issue that you would like to have addressed during these sessions. Also, I'm very keen to hear any feedback related to our user guides, our release notes, the registration guide, any documentation that and these training sessions that we organize. Any feedback will help us to improve our approach in future. So I will now hand over to my colleague Christina, who will explain a little bit how this Q&A session will work. Thank you.
Okay, so please note this session is being recorded and it will be made available via EMA YouTube channel, but also via the EMA corporate website, so from the event page. During the session, we will use Slido in order to collect your questions. It is a very simple tool to use. You can decide to use it also by remaining anonymous or by including your name. These are the specific instructions to follow. So you can either decide to join via your web browser, going to slido.com, or you can join directly this session by scanning the QR code you see here displayed with your mobile. The code you have to insert is 2874178. Please note that you can also decide to upvote any questions that has been asked by another person that you want here answered. This is because we will address the questions live, starting from the most voted ones. Okay, so now I will move directly to the Slido tool so that we can look at the questions. So I kindly invite you to start sending them. I will now share again the code in case you didn't have time to look at it. Okay, so I see we are now receiving the first questions. Again, I repeat, the code is the one you see on the screen. I think we can start with the first one, Christina.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the first question, do we have any training environment available to create test eAF and also prepare training for our internal user eAF users? In principle, you don't really need any particular training environment, but you can use the production environment as the training environment. It has always the latest available features and functionalities. The products that we use in that production environment are those of production PMS coming directly from Sciamet. So as the system is designed so that you're not submitting anything from that system, there is absolutely no harm in using this environment as what we would call a sandbox or a training area. So you can create forms as long as you don't submit those forms when they are for training purposes. That's absolutely fine. So there is no need for any separate training environment. You can use this production environment for your training purposes. And if those forms are then not needed afterwards, you can just simply deactivate them and they will move in under the deactivated tab. We're of course in future creating or working in a feature to be able to permanently delete those deactivated forms, but for now they can simply be moved to the deactivated tab.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, here we have the next most voted question. When are fixes planned for the known limitations? For instance, injectables, type 2 variation, big images that were communicated last week.
Yes, so we are working with a release schedule. We currently have quite a sizable backlog of various different defects, bugs that were raised already during the external user acceptance testing, and of course by our product team. So we keep on working on these bug fixes and new user stories and features in an order that we feel that will benefit the most, the largest number of users. Currently, at the time of the go live, we said we will have regular releases. We are not yet 100% sure when our first bug fix and a kind of minor release will be. Our most likeliest potential window for that would be around mid-December. So we may be aiming for the 12th of December. This will bring some of the fixes. I'm expecting that, for example, the limitation for the line extensions that contain only one scope would be fixed in that. Hopefully, also the issue with the images. The issue with regards to the injectables to be used in a longer procedures is unfortunately something that is quite complicated, and we will need to work very closely with our PMS team colleagues. So for that particular, if we say known limitation is not really a bug, we are probably looking for the next major release, which will be coming at some point early next year. But we are planning to inform you well in advance when fixes are coming and what will be fixed and released in those upcoming releases. As soon as we are aware of the exact date and the depending, of course, on the date, we will have a different number of bugs and user stories being released. We will be providing this information. So unfortunately, I don't have a firm date and details for different known limitations as of yet.
Thank you, Christina. If I include another colleague as co-author in an eAF, does this colleague need an eAF role for the organization I'm filling in the application for?
Yes. So this other colleague should be affiliated to the organization that the application is filled in for. So of course, if you have a work sharing application, so you have two different organizations products in one application form, these co-authors in that case don't need to be affiliated to the organization one if you have organization one and organization two. But of course, if the colleague needs to see all the products and all the product information, then indeed they would need to be affiliated. I'm just publishing an updated version of the registration guide, mainly with the details about the multi-factor authentication. So no change related to the co-authoring aspects as such, but you may refer to that guide for more information.
Thank you. Is it allowed to create a test eAF in the production environment for training purposes?
Absolutely, and this is the approach that we would recommend for now, because there is no submission directly from the portal, so it is absolutely fine to use the production environment for testing and training purposes. In fact, we strongly recommend to use this environment for those purposes because there you will always have the latest features and functionalities available that are in the production environment. So even if you were included in the testing, be it the alpha testing or the beta UAT, we always strongly recommend using the production environment. And of course, because we're not yet starting the transitional period, the use is purely optional. Feel free to use the production environment as your testing and training environment.
Can you go through the final steps of eAF for signature and submission of completed eAF, as it is not clear to me how then this eAF submitted can be reused in case of validation issues?
Of course, sure. So when you are filling in your application form, you have an option at the screen at the end. Of course, export the form and finalize the form. So if you have finalized the form, it will then move into the completed status in your tabs of the in the portal. You then have your exported PDF rendition. You would include an digital signature if you wish to use one for this PDF rendition. Put this signed document into your ECTD package. If you are then contacted by EMA with regards to a validation issue, you will go back to the eAF, to the PLM portal. You can go to the form that is in the completed status. You will click into the completed form and there's an option to move it back to draft so you can continue editing it. It will then move to your draft tab. You go back to the form as you would in while it's already or while it's still in a draft status. You make the edits that you wish to make and you export again, finalize again, and it moves back to the completed status. So basically you're just bringing that form from the completed back into your draft. You make the edits that have been requested by the EMA validation team, and then you export again and you can finalize that form again and it moves back to the completed status.
Thank you. Will UK national MAs be maintained in EMA databases and therefore be available for web-based form?
No. So only if these are, if the products are authorized in the UK, Northern Ireland, and they are considered to be covered by these common procedures, by EU procedures, the products would be available in PMS. But UK national marketing authorizations would not in general be maintained in the EMA database. With regards to the use of the eAFs in general for MHRA for UK procedures, you should contact the MHRA.
Thank you, Christine. Also, next question is related to whether the form was applicable for UK submissions. So I think you already replied on this. I don't know whether you want to add anything.
No, so really just to say that the PLM portal is really for EU procedures. So at this stage, we only have the centralized procedure products. And then in the next phase, when we will be extending, we will include the nationally authorized products for European Union.
Thank you. For consultancy users, does each user need to have an individual EMA account so that the MAH can assign relevant access level on the PLM portal? Or could the MAH EMA account also be used by consultants?
We would recommend that each consultancy user has their individual EMA account. So you cannot create an EMA account on behalf of someone else. So it's very important that each individual user has their very own account. Then that particular user can be affiliated to those marketing authorization holders that they will be working for. They can have different roles for different marketing authorization holders. So it's important that each consultant working for a consultancy has their own individual account. This is also important from the logging in perspective for if you think of the multi-factor authentication.
Okay, another question related to using, let's say, test forms in production. So will we be able to delete then the test forms from the production environment?
Yes, this will be possible in future. For now, we have the deactivated tab, so you can just simply move them into the deactivated status. This is done by when you are in your portal screen. On the right-hand side, you have a little down arrow, and there is an option to deactivate a form. So you can simply move them to the deactivated tab. If you want to continue working on those forms, you can bring them, of course, back to draft. Currently, the system does not have a feature that would enable you to completely delete a form. This is something that is in our backlog and will be developed in future. But for now, any test forms or any forms that you wish to discard, you can just simply move them to the deactivated tab. And there's no limit at all how many forms you have in the deactivated or in your drafts tab.
Are there any details regarding the file size of the eAF output PDF? This is important to know for the submission at the end.
There isn't any details. Normally, these, because it is not an interactive form, but it is a PDF rendition. So normally it is actually very small, depending, of course, the number of images, but we haven't actually looked in detail into the particular file size, depending on how many images have been included there. But I do not believe that these would reach the maximum size allowed within an ECTD package. So that would normally be 200 megabytes, and I don't, sorry, gigabytes, and I don't think we would be reaching anywhere such numbers.
Okay. Next question is, as we are CRO organization, CRO and MAH work together on the eAF, all the authors, co-authors must be registered under the MAH organization.
Normally, how this co-authoring works, we have created some details and presentations in relation to how to use the co-author. So this is in the registration guide. But basically, depending on the role of the co-author and what you want the co-author to see, they need to be affiliated to an organization. You may have an application, a work sharing application that has multiple organizations, and you don't want all co-authors to see all the details for all products, then they can have a more limited role. But in order for anyone to access the form, they need to be affiliated to a marketing authorization holder, and that marketing authorization holder must then be, of course, included in that particular application form. But if you have a specific scenario, we can look at very specific details. But of course, you may wish to ask questions that have very detailed information through our service desk, where we can really look at in detail the question and use actual company names and colleagues' names.
Thank you. Okay, then we have a question with respect to this Slido code, whether it will remain constant for the other two Q&A clinics. Yes, we can do this, of course. We can keep this code active, so you can continue posting, and then in the next session, of course, we will look at the most prioritized first.
Certainly.
Can the select device type section be amended by others? The medical device for which we would like to submit a variation, e.g. Hankel's Web or Plaster, is not available in the drop-down menu.
Okay, so the device types in that list do come from RMS. So if there is a need for an additional device type, this would mean that we would need to do an RMS change request. If an RMS change request needs to be submitted, please follow the regular process, and we will then have a look at if the term is of such nature that it can be added.
Okay. Within an international big company, there are several local European affiliates. Do you have a proposal how to organize the approval process for the eAF roles? Do all the local affiliates, individual org log IDs need a known IRIS admin role?
Um, Normally, each organization needs their own IRIS or eAF admin role. The roles are not location specific, but organization specific.
Next question is, if there we start using the Daddy Web eAF and we experience issues before the end of the transition phase, would it be possible to revert using the previous PDF application form for individual submissions?
Of course, absolutely. So, obviously, if you have already submitted using the web form and you receive a validation comment from EMA, you cannot fix the validation issue using that web-based form. You can revert back to the PDF. Normally, we would request not to change the form during an ongoing procedure. But in the beginning, a validation issue can occur, or there may be a limitation in the form that wasn't foreseen at the time of the submission. But indeed, once the transitional period starts, and until to the end of the transitional period, you have an absolute freedom to select whether you wish to use the PDF form or whether you wish to use the new web form. So it is not at all mandatory to use the form before the end of the transitional period. And just as a note, we have not yet started the transitional period. The use is purely optional now, and there is absolutely no pressure to start using it immediately. Take your time to play around in the system, fill in test forms. So what I would even recommend is when you have a procedure starting, especially if it's a bit more complicated or a longer procedure, you may wish to still submit in PDF, but you may want to, in parallel, as a like a training exercise, fill in the web-based form as well and see that you can fill in the form exactly like you would do it in a PDF. If you find any issues, please contact us, raise change requests, raise bugs, and we can then improve that form before the transitional period starts. So it will also take a little bit pressure off from us during that transitional period, because we don't want to be finding out issues and limitation during the transition phase. So this period is really a learning exercise period for all of us, for the users and for EMA to still fix and address any important findings.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, next question, I think it's really related to the user acceptance testing that we conducted with some industry representatives back in September. So they're asking for a clarification on the discussion with respect to the copy function with the eAF maintenance group to illustrate the industry typical current internal variation process. Do you have any updates to share on this, Christina?
We had our SME group meeting yesterday. Industry colleagues mentioned that they are preparing for that session. So we haven't set a specific date, but once those discussions take place, so we're hoping to have a very specific dedicated session to discuss and look at different feedback from different companies, how the copy function would be best implemented, what way would it bring the most benefits to most users, so that we can start scheduling. So firstly start designing it, and then we can include it into our backlog. But for implementation prior to the next UAT, we will have to look at the scope of the next UAT, and also just as mm, how to call it, advance notice, we are currently looking at our timelines. So please don't feel too pressurized with regards to the dates that are currently published for the next UAT. There may be some changes in those dates. We are carefully looking at our roadmap and release schedule at the moment.
Thank you, Christina, for this update. How will the product transfer be handled in Daily after a MA transfer? Is there a separate notification necessary?
Um, At the moment, of course, transfers, for example, for centralized procedure, are not considered variations. So when the MA transfer is concluded, the product details in SciMed, where our current product load is coming from, is the products are updated in SciMed, and then the correct details are reflected in PMS, through which the Web eAF retrieves the products. So I don't think there's a separate notification necessary unless this is part of the current process. But we don't foresee any particular need for any changes on the transfer procedures. So once the transfer is concluded, SIMET is updated, the product should be updated, and the updated details should be available through the portal. But this is something I can certainly more look into, and we can add more details into the user guide, if any change.
Is the submission of the new eAF the same as it is currently?
Absolutely. So with the new eAF form, the main difference is in the filling of the form. So instead of working with an interactive PDF form, you will go to the web portal, you fill in the form in the web portal, you will export the form, and then you will include it within your ECTD package, exactly how you would today include your interactive PDF form inside your ECTD package. And then you submit it using the e-submission gateway. So there's absolutely no change how you submit the filled in form. The difference is how you fill in the form, not in the submission part.
Thank you, Christina. We are just missing 1 minute, so I think that we might want to show the next sessions planned for Q&As. Of course, we will keep this Slido open so that all the questions posted will be addressed in the next sessions. I would like to launch a quick poll that you can access always by using the same Slido code. So if you would like to give us some feedback also by posting it in the Slido, you're welcome to do it. And while you're voting, I will now show the next sessions.
And while Christina is preparing that, just as a quick note, if you have further questions that we did not have time to address, please feel free to include them in the Slido, and we will either try and address them in writing, or we will address them in the next sessions. And of course, there will be an updated Q&A document. And we also had quite a lot of questions during last week's live training session, and we did not have sufficient time to answer all of those questions. So we will be addressing them, and we will publish an updated user Q&A document.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, so here are the next Q&As that are scheduled. So again, it will be half an hour slot, so same slot as today from 11 to 11:30 on 22nd and 29th of November. You should register for these sessions in a separate link, so in a separate event page. However, as mentioned before, the Slido will remain the same. So, Christina, I will hand over to you for final closing. Thank you.
So thank you very much for all who participated. Thank you for the very good questions. Please keep them coming. And if anything, you're also, of course, invited to provide any feedback through Slido with regards to the user guidance documents. If there's any part that you feel is not well addressed, be it the Q&A, the registration guide, or the portal navigation guide, please mention it in the Slido, and we will be addressing those details better, because of course we want this to make work for you, and we want it to be as good of a user experience as possible. Thank you very much.